What it do, homies? It's your boy Dave, and I'm back today. We back with some more Critical Drinker. This time we're checking out why modern movies suck. They're too expensive. Let's go ahead, shut up, and turn it up.
Now, you don't need me to tell you that modern Hollywood has got itself some problems. Whether it's ongoing strike action, declining artistic creativity, an over-reliance on remakes and tired genres that are past their peak, or a general aversion to doing anything particularly new or inventive. And to be fair, I've covered a lot.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so I understand, a Spider-Man movie, but as far as new and inventive, the way that they animated the first, what was it, Into the Spider-Verse, the first one that it came out, oh, that had ripples. It had 100% ripples, how they kind of lowered the frames per second to give it more of a action feel. Oh yeah, you've seen that replicated across a whole bunch of stuff. One in particular, Puss in Boots, when he was fighting that big old giant with that bell on his head, or where he destroyed it with a bell, they used that. I wouldn't say that. I thought the animation style with this one was quite, as a matter, innovative, right? Of course, they're not the first people to do it, but they did it with so much flash. They did it with so much flair. It was so good. So I disagree with putting him here. What y'all think?
Aversion to doing anything particularly new or inventive. And to be fair, I've covered a lot of these problems in previous installments of this series, but one of the biggest overriding factors in all of this is a financial one. Put simply, movies are too damn expensive these days. The production budgets for mainstream Hollywood films have been steadily rising since the 1990s, but the process has accelerated out of control over the past few years. In fact, out of the 100 most expensive movies ever released, 66 of them were made in the past 10 years. But
Wow.
Drinker, you intoxicated bastion of common sense in a world gone mad, I hear you say, why is this a bad thing? If studios want to spend more money on their films, why not let them get on with it? Well, the thing is, this kind of approach to filmmaking creates problems. The kind of problems that cause a ripple effect through the entire industry, ultimately.
Okay, so I'm just gonna take a guess about what he's about to say, and I kind of feel the same way about video games, that they spend so much money on the visuals and everything that it lacks the story, right? It lacks character, if you will. It's just bang bang, super shiny Michael Bay explosions everywhere, and I'm not sure. Maybe people are more catered to things exploding, really really shiny things. I'm not sure, but that's what I think he's going.
Ultimately undermining the quality of the films that we get to watch. The first and most obvious of these problems is an economic one. As I explained during my Indiana Jones video, once you factor in promotional costs and distributors' fees, the average movie needs to make about 3 times its production budget just to break even. That's hard
Wow.
enough even for relatively small movies, but it becomes infinitely more difficult for films at the top end of the scale. Because if your movie happens to be one of the growing number that cost more than $300 million to make, then you're looking at close to $1 billion just to start turning a profit. Even now, there's not many films capable of reaching that milestone. Which brings me along to another problem, the cost of failure. See, the financial losses incurred by the studio begin to rise exponentially as the budget goes up. A $50 million flop is embarrassing to be sure, but a $300 million flop is absolutely disastrous. And the inevitable result of massive amounts of money being at stake is that studios tend to seek out safety, predictability, and proven track records.
Okay.
Rather than taking a risk on smaller, riskier, and more diverse projects, they
And honestly, I feel like most of that is probably our fault, right? That it's kind of the culture's fault about what we are wanting to look at, where we go to spend our money, right? Because if we all of a sudden, if I mean, these people aren't breaking even. I mean, it sounds like they're not breaking even, or not coming close to breaking even, and but they just keep doing it. They keep doing it over and over and over again, and I guess because we keep throwing money at it. You know what I mean? Maybe we don't care so much about the story. Right? As I was saying in the beginning, we just want big shiny stuff, big explosions. Who cares about the story?
records. Rather than taking a risk on smaller, riskier and more diverse projects, they tend to blow their load on whatever's popular right now. And up until recently, that meant either big budget effects heavy superhero flicks, big budget effects heavy resurrections of old franchises, or big budget effects heavy remakes of classic films from previous decades. Spot the common factor here? There seems to be a real mentality in Hollywood now that bigger and louder somehow equals better, and the result is an endless competition to produce the most visually stunning pieces of cinema possible. But the problem is that the more you focus on the visuals of your film, the more you tend to neglect everything else around it. These days there's an over-reliance on
I
spectacle and
wasn't too
scale to
off.
draw audiences in, and it ends up becoming a crutch for bad writing and lack of creativity. I mean, you can't honestly tell me that you were gripped by Avatar 2's compelling and complex storyline. Jesus, if you can even remember a single thing that actually happened in that movie, I'll be impressed. What you end up with instead are a series of beautiful but ultimately empty and meaningless
Facts.
tech demos that keep you momentarily distracted
Tech
but offer no
demos.
long-term impact or emotional payoff. They stimulate your eyes but not your brain, and the more it happens, the more audiences start to become jaded and
Yeah,
disinterested in
yeah.
what Hollywood has to offer. Another big problem with so much money at stake is studio interference. I've lost track of the number of films that have been derailed and ruined because the studio started to get jittery about the filmmaker's creative vision and decided
Ooh, what was I just watching? I was just watching something recently, or maybe it was Critical Drink I was watching where he was talking about, no, this was something else. He was talking about, I'm thinking about The Rock, right? And his hand and all the production. It was a whole video I was watching, but with him just saying that, oh yeah, that was definitely The Rock's position in his studio.
and ruined because the studio started to get jittery about the filmmaker's creative vision and decided to stick their oar in with endless test screenings, last minute rewrites, and mandatory reshoots to produce something more commercially viable. Again, it's a nice idea in theory, but the problem is that studio executives aren't storytellers, they're money men, and the decisions they make tend to be driven by whatever they think will generate the most money. Narrative cohesion and creative integrity don't tend to factor into their thinking, because all that really matters is keeping the shareholders happy. Not
You
only
know, you know, I can relate to this. Even though I'm just a reactor, I can relate to this a little bit, right? Because before I even started doing reactions, I did like 4 years ago, I did a whole lot of research into what people was liking and what people didn't like, right? And the number one thing, and I'm pretty sure all reaction channels face this, is that people hate it when reactors pause, right? But the whole point of the pausing is so that we can, you know, at least try to make this somewhat transformative, right? You want me to just sit here and watch this without offering anything, but maybe that's exactly what people want, right? They don't want to hear all the narrative. They don't want to hear any of that type of stuff. They just want to see, facial or something, see what you think about one specific scene or something that they watched, and then they out of there. You know what I mean? I know there are some people, I got some faithful subs that kind of stay through all my commentary, even though I ramble. I do like to ramble a lot. But I found myself at the beginning of my reacting stages doing what is called imposter syndrome, right? Where I was trying to mimic what other reactors were doing, right? Because that's what everybody wanted to see. And it wasn't until after about 6 months after I started my first channel that I knew it wasn't working for me. And what I needed to do was kind of be myself, right? And then that's of course when I wouldn't necessarily say I exploded or anything, but that's when I started seeing traction, when I started being myself and not like No Life Shaq or AOK or Steve Knights. I think he was doing some stuff, like the big reactors. I started doing myself, I don't yell in my reactions, right? I use my inside voice. Most of my intelligence is going to be more music based as opposed to something like this, but I like watching this stuff because it stimulates the brain. But you see this type of practice in the movies and everywhere. It isn't just the movies. Just got me thinking about that right now. I bet you in the next 4 videos that I release in the next week, somebody's going to complain that I pause too much. You need to start watching reaction videos.
into their thinking, because all that really matters is keeping the shareholders happy. Not only do rewrites and reshoots undermine a filmmaker's creative vision, but they also push the film's production budget even higher, making it even more difficult to turn up profits. So what do you do when movies cost a shit ton of money to make and your confidence in new projects is at an all-time low? Well, you resurrect dusty old franchises with inbuilt fan bases and strong name recognition and hope that it'll somehow translate into financial success. Why do you think we've seen so many new Star Trek, Star Wars, Terminator, Indiana Jones, and Ghostbusters movies in recent years?
Wait a minute.
Star Wars, Terminator.
Okay, I can get those. I don't understand the Star Wars thing. The only reason why is because Star Wars is such a vast universe. There's always new stories to be told, right? That kind of expands on the universe. Even though we have the books for Star Wars, right? Some people want to see that made into a movie. So I'm not sure about Star Wars. I wouldn't necessarily say that as rehashed. It does follow the whole budget and everything, flashy and everything. But I don't agree with Star Wars. I don't. Terminator, I do feel that way that they kind of just coming up with random stories with them and time jumping forward and everything. They can create an endless amount of stories. But for Star Wars, I mean, honestly, I would love to see a movie about Darth Bane, the person who instituted, whatever the word is, the rule of two. I want to see a movie about Darth Bane. I wouldn't mind that.
Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters movies in recent years, not to mention Disney's endless cannibalization of their classic animated films. It's because all of those things have been big hits at some point in the past, and so logically, if you can shit out a lazy cash grab remake or unnecessary sequel, then it'll be equally successful, right?
Wrong.
The top 10 movies so far this year, 7 of them are either sequels or remakes of older films.
What we got here? Across the Spider-Verse. Oh, wow. That only made 600. I mean, not only, but only made 600 million. I thought it was a little bit more successful than that. I'm really surprised at John Wick. I enjoyed that movie. John Wick's pretty cool. I'm surprised where Spider-Man's at. But the Super Mario Brothers, I still haven't seen that. I'm very surprised where Barbie's at, too.
And the thing is, it didn't always used to be this way. Go back in time 20 years and the biggest films of 2003 were
Wait.
Return of the King.
Wait. Was this how much money is this how much money they spent or how much money they made? Let me go back.
The top 10 movies so far this year, 7 of them are either sequels or remakes of older films.
I'm going to assume this is how much it cost for them to make.
And the thing is, it didn't always used to be this way. Go back in time 20 years and the biggest films of 2003 were Return of the King, Pirates of the Caribbean, Finding Nemo, and
Narrative.
Bruce Almighty.
Hilarious.
Jump back 30 years and Jurassic Park, The Fugitive, The Firm, Sleepless in Seattle, and Mrs. Doubtfire ruled the box office. I mean, I know which movies I find more worthy of my time. There's also a rather predictable tendency to follow the crowd at the top levels of Hollywood, leeching off winning formulas to replicate the successes of others rather than taking the risk of inventing your own. I know it's become popular to shit on the MCU nowadays, but in its prime, it absolutely changed the landscape of modern blockbuster movies to the point where almost everyone adopted the exact same style and tone. Serious, mature, and thought-provoking storytelling was
That's
out,
facts.
and snarky, ironic, self-deprecating humour was in. How many movies over the past 10 years can you think of where characters stop every couple of minutes to make another lame attempt at a Joss Whedon joke? It's because everyone wanted their movie to be the next Avengers. The result of all these different factors is a kind of creative inertia, a feeling of bland, depressing sameness. You get the sense that most big budget movies
Mummy was
nowadays all
amazing.
rolled off the same assembly line, composed of the same basic ingredients with only minor alterations. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that we seem to have reached the maximum upward limit of how big and expensive movies can possibly be, beyond which it becomes impossible to even turn a profit. And maybe it might be time for studios to start backing down a little, stop risking everything on one mega project that has to appeal to as many people as possible, and start investing their money in a more diverse range of smaller, cheaper, creatively ambitious films with a lower bar for success.
Matrix was-
Projects where the filmmakers actually get the creative freedom they need to bring their visions to life without constant interference, where they can afford to take risks and try out new ideas without the fear that one single failure could bring down the entire studio. And to be honest, I think we could all benefit from a bit more variety in our summer movie season.
Instead of just a bunch of
Anyway, that's all I've got for
yeah,
today.
I think out of those movies he listed, The Matrix was truly unique, man. Nice story. I'm pretty sure iterations of that story has been told before, but that was a good mix of story, narrative, charisma, a chance being. I mean, come on now. Everybody left that movie theater wondering if he was in the Matrix, bro. Those of you who understood it the first time you watched it. Anyways, y'all let me know about y'all let me know why y'all think modern movies suck. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like and subscribe. Dave's out.